My best friend slept with my boyfriend. They called it a mistake. I called it the biggest mistake of their lives. My name is Jessica Cole. I am 27 years old. And the night I found out my best friend had been in my boyfriend's bed was the night the ground gave out beneath me. I still remember the sound of laughter that drifted from behind the half-closed door. Soft at first, then louder, sharper, the kind of laugh that cuts through walls. It was familiar. Too familiar. It was hers. Samantha. We had been inseparable for years. Two halves of the same reckless, fearless coin. She was the friend who stayed up all night with me studying for exams, who held my hair back when I drank too much at 21, who swore on every broken secret that we'd never betray each other. And yet, there it was, her laugh wrapped up with his voice. Ethan. The man who told me he loved me more than anything. The man who promised me we were building a future together. Who talked about apartments, vacations, even children. His voice was lower than hers, muffled in the heat of words I couldn't quite catch. But then there was a sound I couldn't mistake, the creak of my own bed frame. My throat closed, my pulse crashing like thunder in my ears. I pressed my hand against the wall, my fingers trembling. For a moment, I told myself it couldn't be what I thought. Maybe I was imagining. Maybe it was something else. Maybe. Then I heard it. Her voice. Clear. Sharp. Breaking every illusion I had left. "This is wrong, Ethan," Samantha whispered, but she was laughing even as she said it. "She'll kill us if she ever finds out." And Ethan's reply, low and certain. "She'll never know." The world tilted. My legs carried me forward before my mind caught up. The door wasn't locked. It wasn't even closed. When I pushed it open, the air hit me like a punch. Sweat, perfume, betrayal, all tangled together. They froze when they saw me. Samantha's smile vanished, her eyes wide. Her hand clutching the sheet like it could hide what she had done. Ethan's face drained of color. His mouth opening and closing like a man drowning. "Jess," he started, his voice breaking. "It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like." The oldest, ugliest lie in the book. I stared at them, the two people I had trusted most in this world, the people who were supposed to be my safe place. My chest ached as if someone had reached inside and twisted my heart in their fist. Samantha finally spoke, her voice trembling but laced with something that made me sick. Defensiveness. "It was a mistake. We didn't mean for it to happen." Mistake. Her word ricocheted in my skull, sharp and cruel. Mistake. As if she had tripped and fallen into my boyfriend's arms. As if betrayal was an accident. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there, my silence heavier than anything I could have shouted. And in that silence, I saw the truth settle over both of them. I would never forgive this. I turned on my heel and walked out, each step shaking, each breath jagged, but my spine straighter than it had ever been. Behind me I heard Ethan call my name, heard Samantha sob, but I didn't stop. I went into the cold night air, my hands clutching the railing of the porch until my knuckles whitened. And in that moment, as the stars blurred through my tears, I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If they thought this was a mistake, then I would show them what it meant to make a choice. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. Hang on, before I tell you what happened next, make sure you've subscribed and left your thoughts in the comments. This part gets intense. When people ask how Samantha and I became best friends, I always say it started with a scraped knee. I was 12, clumsy, and tripped on the schoolyard pavement. While everyone else laughed, she was the one who knelt beside me, offered her hand and said, "Come on, Jess. I've got you." From then on, we were inseparable. Sleepovers, secrets, matching bracelets, the whole picture of girlhood loyalty. She was bold where I was cautious, loud where I was quiet. She had this way of pulling me into her orbit, making me believe we were unstoppable together. When Ethan came into my life years later, she was the first one I introduced him to. I still remember that night. A summer barbecue, the air thick with the smell of grilled corn and cut grass. Ethan shook Samantha's hand and she laughed, telling him, "You better treat her right or you'll have me to answer to." At the time it felt comforting, like I had two people in my corner. I didn't realize she had already marked her place too close to him. The first cracks came quietly, the kind you only notice in hindsight. There were the comments Samantha would make, little jabs that I laughed off at the time. "Jess, you're too nice. A guy like Ethan probably needs a little more excitement." Or, "If I had a boyfriend like him, I'd never let him out of my sight." I told myself she was joking. That's what best friends do, tease. But looking back, there was something sharper under the laughter. Then there was Ethan. He wasn't cruel, not in obvious ways, but he had this confidence that sometimes turned into arrogance. The kind of man who liked to remind me he was the one with options, with power. "Without me, you'd still be stuck in that tiny apartment, Jess," he said once when we argued over bills. His words stung, but I brushed them off because he kissed my forehead afterward and whispered that he didn't mean it. But I remembered. There were other moments too. Nights when Samantha would sit a little too close at parties, when Ethan's eyes lingered a second too long. Times when she'd text him directly, saying it was just easier than going through me. Noticed. I just didn't want to believe what I saw. 'Cause how could I? This was my best friend, the girl who had sworn she'd be my maid of honor someday. And this was my boyfriend, the man I thought would be my husband. Still, unease grew like a splinter under my skin. One evening, months before the betrayal, I came back from the store earlier than expected. I walked into my apartment and found them on the couch, Samantha laughing, Ethan grinning, their heads bent together over something on his phone. They jumped when they saw me. "Jess, we were just looking at memes," Samantha said quickly, too quickly. Ethan smiled, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Yeah, just dumb stuff." I told myself I was overthinking. But that night, lying in bed, I felt the first real chill of doubt slide down my spine. The cracks were there. I just didn't want to face them. Because once you admit the cracks, you have to admit the whole structure might fall. And fall it did. When I think back now, I wonder if I was naive or just hopeful. Maybe both. But one thing I know for certain. The people who betray you don't appear out of nowhere. They're the same faces you once loved. You just learn too late that love can rot from the inside. That night when I heard their laughter through the door wasn't a sudden storm. It was the thunder after years of gathering clouds. And as much as it broke me, it also lit a fire I didn't know I had. Because betrayal isn't just about what they took from me. It's about what I was going to take back. Before we move on, take a second to hit subscribe and drop a comment. I'd love to hear what you think so far. I'll never forget the night the truth finally clawed its way into the open. It was supposed to be a celebration. Ethan had landed a new contract at work, and Samantha insisted we all go out to toast his success. The bar was packed, the kind of Friday night chaos where laughter and music bounced off the walls. Neon lights washed the room in shades of red and blue, drinks clinked against tables, and for a while I convinced myself everything was fine. Samantha hugged me tight when I arrived, whispering, "Tonight's about fun, Jess. No stress." I wanted to believe her. But as the night wore on, something felt wrong. Samantha leaned in too close when she spoke to Ethan. Her laugh lingered too long. Ethan's hand brushed hers once, then again, as if by accident. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to smile. "Another round?" Ethan asked, his eyes flicking between us. "I'll get it," Samantha offered quickly, her hand already on his arm. They disappeared toward the bar together. Minutes ticked by. Then 10. Then 15. The pit in my stomach widened. I pushed through the crowd, weaving between strangers until I spotted them. Not at the bar, but in the shadow of a back hallway near the bathrooms. Her hand was on his chest. His head was bent toward hers. And then I saw it. their lips colliding in a kiss that knocked the air from my lungs. The world blurred. The sound of the music dimmed. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat as my best friend and my boyfriend kissed like I was already gone. I wanted to scream, but the shock pinned me in place. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling the sound that threatened to break loose. I stood there, frozen, until Samantha pulled away, her eyes wide. "You saw me." "Jess," she stammered, her voice cracking. Ethan turned, his face paling when he met my gaze. "It's not what it looks like." Not what it looks like. The oldest, weakest lie in the book. I felt my knees wobble as I whispered, "How long?" Neither of them answered. Their silence was louder than any confession. I walked out before the tears could blind me. The cool night air hit my face like ice, but it couldn't numb the fire tearing through me. When I finally got home, Samantha was already calling. I let it ring. The voicemail came seconds later. Her voice shook as she said, "It was a mistake, Jess. Please, it didn't mean anything. Don't let this ruin us." Ruin us? As if she hadn't already burned the foundation of everything we built. Ethan came home hours later, reeking of whiskey and guilt. He tried to sit beside me, but I shifted away, clutching the couch cushion like it was a shield. "Jess," he began, his words slow, practiced. "I screwed up. But it was a one-time thing. Love you. Don't throw this away over a mistake." Mistake. They both used the same word, as if rehearsed. I stared at him, my hands trembling, my heart splintering. "Do you even hear yourself? You betrayed me. Both of you. And you think one word erases that?" His jaw tightened. "You need me, Jess. Without me, what do you have?" The arrogance, the certainty in his voice, hit harder than the kiss itself. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the dark with Samantha's voicemail still echoing in my head. Mistake, mistake, mistake. Well, it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And they had made it together. I pressed delete on her voicemail and whispered into the empty room. "You'll regret this. Both of you. Before we go any further, click subscribe and let me know in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes?" Sleep never came that night. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, Ethan's words replaying like a broken record. "Without me, what do you have?" The arrogance of it. The entitlement. As if my worth began and ended with him. As if Samantha hadn't carved a knife through the one friendship I thought was unshakable. But under the pain, something else began to stir. Cold. Steady. A current of resolve threading through every nerve in my body. They thought this was over. They thought I'd cry, forgive, and shrink back into silence. They didn't know me. By morning I had already decided. I wouldn't just leave them behind. I would expose them. Began small. Quietly. Methodically. The first step was gathering proof. I went through my phone and remembered every moment that hadn't sat right. Text Samantha had sent me late at night. "Ethan says you're too tired, maybe I should come over to keep him company." At the time I thought she was joking. Now the bile rose in my throat. Screenshots. Save. Then I remembered the necklace Ethan had given her for her birthday. One he told me he couldn't afford when I had pointed it out in the store weeks earlier. I scrolled back through photos from that night. There it was. The delicate silver chain glinting around her neck. Evidence. Piece by piece, I stitched together a story that was already true but needed the world to see it. Next I watched them. Observed how carelessly they still moved around me, thinking I hadn't noticed, thinking I was too weak to do anything. Ethan leaving his phone on the counter, Samantha slipping away during group hangouts to answer his calls. One evening while Ethan showered, I opened his phone with a passcode I'd long memorized. I scrolled until I found the thread. Their thread. Dozens of messages. Some flirty. Some explicit. None mistakable. Copied every one. By then, the outline of my plan was clear. But the question was how. How to pull this off so the sting of betrayal burned in their skin the way it burned in mine? The answer came one evening when Samantha invited me to her networking event. She worked in PR, obsessed with appearances, constantly curating her image like life was a glossy magazine. It was the kind of event where Ethan would no doubt be glued to her side, where their smiles would stretch wide for everyone else to admire. That would be the stage. I smiled sweetly when she told me about it, nodding as though nothing had cracked between us. Of course I'll be there, I said. And that night when I was alone, I opened my laptop and started drafting screenshots, messages, photos. A timeline that showed exactly who they were when the lights dimmed. Not a mistake. Not an accident. A betrayal calculated and repeated. As the document grew, so did my resolve. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I only felt colder, stronger, sharper. They had mocked me in whispers. I would ruin them in front of everyone they sought to impress. By the time the event rolled around, the file was finished. Save. Ready. The final step was timing. Not too early, not too late. It had to be delivered at the precise moment when their masks were brightest, when the cameras flashed, and the crowd's attention was glued to them. I practiced the words I would say, the calm tone I would use as the world tilted under their feet. Because this wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. They had stolen my trust, my love, my friendship. Now I would steal their image, their pride, their carefully constructed facade. And when it was over, they wouldn't just lose me. They'd lose the one thing they valued more than anything, their reputation. Before we move on, take a second to hit subscribe and drop a comment. I'd love to hear what you think so far. The night of Samantha's event was a blur of perfume, polished smiles, and clinking glasses. Everyone was dressed to impress, hungry for attention, the air thick with ambition and vanity. Samantha was in her element. She wore a crimson dress that clung like armor, her laughter just a little too loud, her arm wrapped through Ethan's like she'd won some secret prize. She saw me across the room and beamed, the kind of wide, performative smile she saved for crowds. "Jess," she called, her voice sugar-sweet. "So glad you made it." Smiled back. "Oh." Controlled. I walked toward her with steady steps, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my clutch pressed tight under my arm, the clutch that held everything. The speeches began, predictable and pretentious. Samantha was announced as the rising star of the PR firm, praised for her authenticity and loyalty to clients. The irony nearly made me laugh. Then she took the stage. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed, dripping with charm. Ethan stood nearby, hands tucked in his pockets, smirking as though the room belonged to them both. That was the moment. I stepped forward, slow and deliberate, until I stood in the middle of the crowd. My heart hammered in my chest, but my face stayed calm. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clear over the microphone feedback. Heads turned. Samantha's practiced smile faltered, just slightly. Ethan frowned. I lifted my phone, connected to the projector behind her. A single click, and the screen flickered. Then the messages appeared. Line after line. Samantha's words. Ethan's words. Their little secret world blown wide open for every polished guest to read. The crowd gasped, murmurs rippling like wildfire. Samantha's face drained of color. Ethan lunged forward, hissing, "What the hell are you doing, Jess?" I met his eyes, my voice cold as steel. "I'm showing everyone the truth. You didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. Over and over again." Samantha stammered, reaching for the microphone, but her own words glared back at her from the screen. "She won't suspect a thing. She's too naive." Whispers. Phones snapping photos, recording videos. Her career. Her image. Her perfect facade. All unraveling in seconds. Ethan cursed under his breath, tugging at her arm, but she yanked away, furious. "Don't touch me. This is your fault." she snapped, forgetting the crowd, forgetting the performance. Her voice cracked, raw and panicked. The room erupted. Some guests whispered in disgust, others slipped away, not wanting to be associated with the wreckage. Samantha's boss stood frozen, his face twisted in shock and disappointment. And me. I stood tall, my voice steady. You both laughed at me, lied to me, betrayed me. Tonight you don't get to hide. Tonight, everyone sees exactly who you are. Samantha dropped the microphone. Ethan stormed out, his face twisted with rage. But neither of them could undo what had already been seen. By the time I left the event, the whispers had grown into a roar. Samantha's reputation was shattered. Ethan's mask of control was gone. They had each other still, but only in ruin. And me. I walked out into the night air, the city lights glinting above me, feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since the betrayal, I wasn't the one carrying the shame. They were. And they would carry it for the rest of their lives. I didn't need to scream or beg for justice. I had let the truth speak for me, and the truth had been louder than any revenge I could have dreamed. Samantha's career imploded within weeks. The firm dropped her, clients fled, and her authentic brand became a laughingstock online. Ethan tried to crawl back, begging for another chance once Samantha's world crumbled, but I blocked his number without a word. They had taken so much from me: trust, love, years of friendship. But in the end, I had taken what they valued most: their pride, their reputation, their lies exposed in the most public way possible. And as I started over, new city, new life, free of both of them, I carried only one thought. They said it was a mistake. I made sure it became their legacy. They thought I would stay quiet. They thought I would cry in the dark and let them keep their shiny lives intact. But instead, I burned their lies in front of everyone they wanted to impress. And now, when people hear their names, they don't think of charm or success. They think of betrayal. Of two cowards who called it a mistake. Until I showed them it was their downfall. If you've ever been betrayed, remember this. You don't have to forgive. You don't have to forget. Sometimes the coldest revenge is just letting the truth speak louder than their lies. And that's exactly what I did.